Hey guys, what's going on? It's Pastor Gage here. We're starting up our new YouTube channel. We've been talking about it for a little bit and it's finally here, so thanks for checking it out. Again, if you haven't heard, the whole point of this video and this YouTube channel, or this series at least, is going to be giving you guys an opportunity to ask the tough questions. This is a place where you can ask anonymously any question you have on your heart or on your mind about God, faith, or the Bible, or anything in between. I'll include a question in the description. You can go ahead and follow that, and any question you submit, I can't see who's asking it. It's completely anonymous, so no pressure, no judgment. Ask something, and I would love to give you my very best answer. So let's get right into it. Again, the question that we're asking is, what's a question you have about God, Bible, the faith, the Bible? What's a question you have about God, the Bible, faith, or anything in between? Oh my goodness, if I can stutter over my words here. The first answer I got, and I've gotten a few now, but the first answer I have reads as thus. Let me pull it up here. How do I keep myself from asking, is God real? Is there actually a God? Wow. Thank you for asking this, because I think this is a great thing to talk about. I think so many more people struggle with doubts than we really let on to it. So my very first gut response, right? My first kind of thing that came to mind for me that I would want to tell you is that, one, you need to know it's okay. It's okay to have doubts. You need to know it's not out of the ordinary. There's nothing wrong with you for having doubts. There's nothing broken or anything like that. It's completely normal to have doubts. Sometimes we kind of stigmatize this in church a little bit, and no one talks about doubts. No one talks about, well, I'm just not really sure what no one talks about that. And so we're led to believe that if we have those doubts, that it's different, right? There's something wrong with me, or my relationship with God isn't right. Not the case. It's just not true. It is perfectly normal to have doubts, and it's perfectly okay to have doubts. So there's nothing wrong with it. That would be the very first thing I would want to let you know. But I do think there are several things that we can do to move from doubts to faith, stronger faith. Because that's just the truth. There is no faith without doubt, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't call it faith, right? We have to act on faith. And so I want to give you my three things that I think would be really good. The very first one, the best thing I think you could do if you're struggling with doubts, is to, one, talk about it. Go talk about it with someone. We already covered it's not a bad thing, right? It's not, there's nothing wrong with you for having doubts. You need to go talk about it with someone. Now, the someone that you're talking to is very important. It needs to be someone who is what we would call a mature Christian. Someone who has walked with the Lord for a very long time. Someone who is very sound and solid in their faith. And that's important because that's going to be the kind of feedback you're getting. So go and talk to someone or someone's, the more the merrier. But talk to someone. Bonus points if they're older than you. If they're older than you, then they can kind of act as a mentor in this conversation, and someone who's gone before you and has already dealt with those kind of doubts, and ask them, talk about it, but ask them not in the vein of trying to get an answer. What's the fix to this? Because they might not have a solid answer for you. But ask in the way of, okay, what's your experience? Have you ever dealt with doubts before? What did that look like for you? How did you reconcile those doubts with your faith? Asking those things, it's okay to talk about. It's okay to talk about, and I think it's good. It'll get us to a good place. So talking about it with someone who is a mature Christian is so important. Just getting it out there. I like to use the illustration of sin, right? And I am not in any way insinuating that having doubts is sin. It's not. It's not a sin to have doubts or to question things. Like I said, it's perfectly normal. But using the metaphor of like when we have a secret sin, right? And we don't tell anybody about this secret sin, right? But we just try and stop doing it on our own or whatever. And what happens is it festers, right? It gets bigger, it gets uglier, it gets just becomes something that it never needed to have become, because we didn't get out and talk about it. Again, not a doubt or not a sin to have doubts. And so it's maybe not the perfect metaphor, but it does kind of illustrate the point of when we have doubts and we don't talk about them, we don't get them out, they're going to become bigger, right? Because they start with this just little nagging question, right? Well, I'm not sure what I think about that, or what if, right? And then it just becomes this big thing because we don't talk about it, we don't get it out. It becomes something bigger than it ever needed to have been if we just would have dealt with it, right? And so that would be my first thing is talk about it. And talk about it with someone who's not family. I think that's important too. I think it's good to talk about it with your parents. I'm not saying not to talk about it with your parents or your siblings or whoever. But talking about it with someone who you're not related to, I think is a good thing because, look, you are now at this point in your life where for the first time maybe, mom and dad always believed in God and they always went to church or maybe not. Maybe it was grandma and grandpa, right? But regardless, along the way, you grew up seeing someone else, their faith, right? And you're just hitting this point in your life maybe where that's no longer good enough. It's no longer good enough to believe what mom and dad believed, or it's no longer good enough to believe what grandma believed. Now you are having to make a decision on your own. You are having to make that decision. No one can make it for you. And so it's perfectly normal to be going through these doubts. But having a conversation with someone that you're not related to, you haven't maybe seen that person growing up, at least in a parent capacity, that's going to be beneficial. So talking to someone from your church would be a great idea, would be a superb idea. Asking your Sunday school teacher or something like that, I think is going to be really beneficial for you. But getting it out and talking about it would be a great thing. My second point would be to simply, and this I actually got from a blog. Maybe I'll link that in there. But I think it was pretty good stuff. And it was mentioning to consider the source. Consider the source of your doubts, right? And are you saying, are you doubting God? Am I doubting who God is because I don't know if I can believe in God? I haven't, I've prayed to him and he hasn't answered. That's one thing. That's something that we need to deal with. Sure. Or one example that they used, and I think is a pretty good example, is maybe some people, look, I'm a pretty scientific minded guy. I'm not super smart or anything like that, but science has just always interested me. I love it. It piques my curiosity. I find it fascinating, right? Well, science can act as a real barrier sometimes for people to fully buy in and believe, right? For example, the creation story, right? Some people believe that the Bible very clearly through their records and everything indicates that the earth is only 1,000 years old. That's cool. I'm not knocking you or anyone who believes that. Some people believe that though, and some people go, well, we have things like carbon dating, which point to the Earth being a lot older than that. And so my reaction to that is I'm not saying how old the Earth is. That's not my point here. I'll leave that one to the theologians. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But what I am saying is that maybe that's not as important. Maybe that's not a hill we need to die on. Maybe that's a hill that our faith doesn't need to die on. If the source of your doubt is that you believe that, carbon dating is real and the earth is millions of years old, then that's great. Can you still believe that God is real, that Jesus came to die for your sins, and all those things that make our faith, right? Those are the important things. And man, I would just hate it if someone wasn't able to believe or felt like they couldn't belong and believe because of something, minor like that, if I can use that word. So again, that's just an example, but consider the source of your faith. And maybe you've considered the source. Maybe you've done step 2 and it is. Maybe it's something serious. I've really got to deal with this. and that's okay. And so then we would move on to step three. Step three would be we need to practice. We need to practice our faith. I'm going to give you guys a quote. This is a quote I got from one of my old professors, and it's always just stuck with me. But the quote says this: act your way to a new way of thinking rather than think your way to a new way of acting. Let me say that one more time. Act your way to a new way of thinking rather than think your way to a new way of acting. And basically what this quote is saying is that if we're struggling with doubt, right? If we're struggling with, is God real? If I keep going back to that, keep asking that, I'm not going to just think my way into a solution on that. I'm not. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to just magically solve this, this doubt and this internal conflict in me. It's not just going to happen. But I can act my way into a new way of thinking, right? The book of Romans talks about this. It says to be transformed by what? By the renewing of your minds, right? So act your way into a new way of thinking. We got to do something to get there. And so we do that by practicing our faith. When we talk about God, some people think of, the man in the sky with that long beard, but I really think the core of the gospel story is about God revealed himself in human form to us, right? And he gave us, he came to live with us, right, for a time. And when Jesus came, right, he didn't go to the religious leaders. He didn't go to the people who thought they knew what they were talking about. No, he went around the beggars and the thieves and those who were very, very sick and very, very poor. Those are the people that Jesus went to. Those who had great needs and those who were sinners, right? And they were the outcasts of society. And so that's the example we have in Jesus, is we need to go and we need to serve. We need to practice our faith by serving the least of these, right? By serving the outcasts in your school, by serving the outcasts where you work or whatever the case may be, the person you bump into on the street. We need to have that attitude and that mind where we're going to go and we're going to serve. We're going to feed the hungry. We're going to clothe the poor. We're going to go do these things because that's the example we have in Jesus. And so when we do that, we're practicing our faith. It's the same thing as there's other ways to practice our faith too, by praying, by getting in the Word. These are all ways that we practice our faith. We do this at church too, right? That's why we do communion, right? We do that because we are practicing our faith and practicing being the people of God and remembering the example that Jesus gave to us. Now, someone, if you were to ask, how do I stop myself from having these doubts? Someone's bound to give you the answer. You need to pray about it, right? And we all know, if we've ever been there, we know that's not enough. That's not enough, a good enough answer. But it is true. It is true. And we need to be praying. It's definitely part of it. It can't be it, right? Dare I say, that's not enough. I think we need to be living it out, and we need to be in the Word as well. It's not just any one of these things; it's all of these things. We need to be praying. We need to be practicing by Jesus' example, and something's going to happen. Something's going to happen when we do. Something's going to change from what's going on. We're going to act our way into a new way of thinking. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If you haven't already, again, just a reminder, I'm going to drop that link in the description below where you can go and 100% anonymously ask any question that's on your heart. I really hope you guys will take this seriously. I've already got several other responses that I'm going to get to, but I would love to do these as often as I get questions for. So take a minute, go and ask a question. I would love to give you my absolute best answer. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.